anyways, I'm super excited about today's lesson. If you haven't already, please download the files that are in the bit link. Here is what that looks like. Okay. And I'm just going to download the whole thing right here. And then we'll get started, okay? We'll do like the whole introduction and whatnot. Okay, awesome. So glad you guys could come. This is gonna be fun. This is one of my favorite animations. I've referenced it for like a bunch of different stuff. Like, it's that like great mix of geometric abstraction and like Bauhaus, and it's just a fun piece. So I'm super excited to do it with you. Okay. Great. There we go. I'm just unzipping that so I can show you guys what we're going to be working on. And as you can see, I have my my regular computer back from the dead. I had to actually like open it up, like unscrew all of the little tiny screws at the bottom. It was this whole epic thing. Let me just check my Ethernet settings and make sure that we're not on wireless, because that would suck. Yes. Oh gosh, no wonder. Oh gosh, we don't want that. That's why it's low. Sorry guys, let me just turn off this and then we'll be back on. All right. Okay, that should be healthier. Okay, sorry about that. I was like, why am I lagging right now? And it was because I was on Wi-Fi, because it's the only way I can print. So let me load up what it is that we're going to make, and then we will be on our way. Okay, so if you haven't already, please download those files that are in the description. They're also in the chat if you're watching live. And you should also have After Effects, Media Encoder, and Illustrator open if you plan to play along. And there's a bunch of stuff in there, and I'm going to show you guys the thing. Okay. All right. Reference. Okay. So I'm going to officially get started. Hi, I'm Kalika. I'm a motion designer and character animator, primarily 2D, though I do dabble in 3D. And I also teach. And currently I'm teaching a class at, I'm teaching a few classes at NYU Tisch in the animation department for undergraduates. And I'm teaching a community college at CUNY Hostos. In the past, I've taught at Pratt Institute, I've taught at Borough of Manhattan Community College, a bunch of other places, and I do one-on-one tutoring in animation, and I do freelance. So yeah, I've been busy. I'm going to show you what it is that we're going to make today, and this is actually part 3. So part 1 was design, part 2 was some animation, and this is part 3 where we're going to finish the animation for this piece right here. And just the first 8 seconds. It's longer than 8 seconds, but we're only doing the first 8 seconds, okay friends? All right, here we go. That's what we're doing. I'm going to play it one more time. And in case if you want to watch it on your own computer, if you've downloaded those files, you'll find it in the Jack and Jones Assets Reference folder. Okay, so let me play that back again. And in case if you're like, what's that funky player you're using? I'm using VLC Player, which it's like a very nerdy hacker type of playback. It's actually a really great open source, meaning free and free to code into video player that's available for both Mac and PC. So here's the piece. So sometimes it's just really educational to take something that already exists, that someone else has already animated, break it apart, figure out how they designed it, and then animate based on how you think it was done. Now, is there really only just one way that this thing could have been animated? Absolutely not. There's so many different ways to animate, but at least this way you can learn, like by kind of getting under the hood. It's like you may not build the same exact car, but it'll run the same, it'll feel the same, and you'll learn a whole bunch of stuff about design and animation while you do it. So this particular piece, I downloaded it from Vimeo. I have the original link in the description to this video, I believe. And we started 3 weeks ago with design. And in the design phase, we created all of these boards, which I'm going to walk you through. So if we look into the folder that I just downloaded, here's the part 1 folder. And I'm going to double click on that. And I collected all my files in After Effects for you guys so that you can just like start from wherever I was. Okay. So I broke up my layouts into separate Illustrator files, and I'm going to show you what those look like. So I'm just going to dive into one of those right now. My Illustrator should be open. And here we go. Don't mind that, don't mind that, don't mind that. And by the way, if you get confused or lost or you don't know what I'm doing, please ask right away into the chat. If you're watching the replay, type it into the comments. But especially for the live chat, there's like a 30-second delay between the time you see the thing and between the time I tell you the thing and you receive the thing, thanks to the wonder and joy of streaming software, which is not quite perfect. So don't hesitate. If you're lost on something, just go for it and ask, and I will be happy to answer out loud or in the chat or both. Okay? My friends who are on here with me can attest that I don't leave any chat unturned, and if you don't think an answer is good enough, you can always just follow up and just say, that still doesn't make sense, and I will explain it to you a different way. Okay, so here's one of my layouts, and as you can see, everything has been separated into different layers. Now, I have to admit, my layer naming wasn't always super consistent. Sometimes I labeled the layers based on like in to out being 1, 2, 3, 4, and sometimes I labeled it from out to in 1, 2, 3, 4. But in After Effects, it's cool. You can always like hover over a thing just like you can in Illustrator, and it will tell you what layer you're on just by clicking on it. It'll just automatically take you there. These layers here are the rays that are coming out from the right hand side. Okay. And then like the little red ball, all of this stuff is on separate layers. However, as you may have seen in the first part of the animation tutorial, it doesn't always translate one-to-one. When you import your Illustrator files, you don't always get the entire shape that you designed, in which case you kind of got to re-import it a different way. And I do run into some of these stumbling blocks during the tutorial, and I'm going to show you how to get past them. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to go over to After Effects, and I know the first part of the tutorial was done in on my Mac. The second part of the tutorial was done on my Mac, but it's the same. It really doesn't matter, except this computer's newer and faster. So in other words, yeah, it does matter because it's going to give you a better experience. Okay, the end. Moving on. So here's my After Effects, and I'm going to open up that starter project. So if you've downloaded the starter project, which I hope you have, it's on Google Drive, and you're going to download the JJ Project Part 1 folder. And once you get into that, there's actually like, because I saved it on a Mac, it gives you this empty phantom folder, which you don't need. And then just double click again on JJ Project Part 1 folder. And then once you get into it, you'll see the After Effects project, and you can double click on that and it should relink. I'm going to show you what you should do if it doesn't relink. So this is opening up, might take a moment, and it's bringing in all my things. And you'll get to see how the whole thing was set up. And I know After Effects does this weird thing. It always shows you like a flashback of the last comp you opened, and you're like, wait, I thought I opened, oh, I did. It always does that. It's like really annoying. But anyways, it does that on everybody's machine, Mac or PC. Like everybody's screwed up. So anyways, as you can see, I have this main composition, which I've called JJ Test. and I color coded my first 3 pre-compositions because I'm done with them. I finished animating them. Green means go. I am done with them. So let's just play back what those are. And I imported the Jack and Jones MP4 original there so that I could have the music. Okay. And I'm pressing spacebar to play back. Okay, that's all I got done. So let's see. Now, if your audio is not playing back and you're like, whoa, friend, this is not cool. What do I do here? What you can do is, it might be that you like changed your audio settings. Like you might have unplugged your headphones after After Effects was open, or you might have plugged in your headphones or your speaker. In which case you just got to go to your preferences. On a Mac, it's going to be in your After Effects menu. PC, it's going to be in your edit menu. And I'm just going to go over to our audio hardware. And in the audio hardware section, I'm going to change up my setting here for my headphones because like they're not there anymore. And I'm waiting for it. Hello. There we are. So it says, the second audio is not working. Yeah, I know, friends. So here we go. Speakers, that'll work. And then I can also go to audio output mapping and make sure that's also set to my speakers. Yay. So now when I press the space bar or control period, or if you have one of those little number pads at the end of your computer, you can just press the period key on its own and it'll just play your music. My music's so quiet. I'll make it louder for you guys. Okay, so period on the number pad or control period if you don't have a number pad. All right, and I'm going to hit spacebar. Okay, so I've got those layouts done, and if you want to learn how to animate those, of course, you can watch part 1 of this tutorial. One thing I forgot to do, and this is really important whenever you're working with Illustrator files, is I forgot to click the little continuously rasterize button. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the continuously rasterize button, this is the button that makes After Effects recognize, dude, it's a vector. Excuse me. So if you don't have this on, After Effects doesn't recognize that you're actually working with vectors, and that can cause some problems. So what you got to do is double click on Jack and Jones layouts 1, 2, and 3. So I just select them all, click, shift click, double click. It opens them all up. I make sure that all of my layers are unlocked, and you can do that really easily just by going to the layer menu, going to switches, and choosing unlock all layers. Isn't that nice? So you don't actually have to like go through and unclick all of the locks. You can just say unlock all layers. Then I can select all with a Command or Control A, and then I can click this little guy right here, which is located between the shy guy and the slash. It's like this little empty box. See that? Little empty box. Wow, that is huge. Magnifier, let's make you smaller. I think like 200 is probably good. Yeah, so right there. And if I click that, it turns on this little starburst icon. And I'm going to do that for all my layouts. So go over to layouts number 2, go to layer, go to switches, go to unlock all, Command or Control A, click the little starburst, and then down to layouts number 1, switches, unlock, Command or Control A, and turn that on. Now, you might be wondering, like, especially if you've never used the continuously rasterize button, in which case, oh my gosh, you are in for a treat. The continuously rasterize button is what makes vectors actually read as vectors in After Effects. So I'm just going to show you. You shouldn't actually do this because otherwise it's going to screw up your animation. But if I don't have the continuous rasterize turned on and I scale this layer bigger, you see how it gets, even though I'm at 100% zoom and I'm at full resolution, like this has gone to crap. Like it's bitmap crap. Like, you know, when you take a JPEG and you just make it bigger and you try to print it and it looks garbage? That's what's going on here. And that's because even though this is an Illustrator layer, and Illustrator layers are technically vector as long as you're not putting like photos in them or other bitmap elements, After Effects doesn't automatically understand them to be vectors. So what you got to do is you have to click that little switch, and then After Effects is like, oh, I have to do some math. And then it calculates the vectors as being math, meaning that it cleans up all of your graphics lines, which is so nice. Like, look how much more attractive that is than this. Ooh, ah, ooh. Okay, so we're going to turn on our continuously rasterize. Just make sure it's on for everybody. And if you did play along, just delete whatever random keyframe you just created, or reset the scale, or undo a couple times. Okay, so you usually don't have to turn that on if you're not going to be scaling things past like 125 or 130%. But if you're going to be scaling it bigger than 135%, that's a good idea to turn it on. All right, so if you have any questions about continuously rasterized, drop those into the chat. It is a rather, it's a rather packed, like dense concept. There's a lot more to it than just turning on vectors. We'll get into that another time. Okay, so I've turned on continuously rasterize for everybody, and then I'm going to go back to JJ Test, and I'm going to look at this next layout, which is layout number 4. And to get to the start of that, I'm just going to hit letter I, and that gets me here. Now, you might remember from the animation that it didn't actually start right there. So here's my little animation, and I tucked it into the corner, like, hey, we're going to check this out every now and again. So I'm going to double click on that so it goes full screen, and I'm going to set my zoom to fit. And as you can see, it didn't start full. It started smaller than full. And then over time, if you just scrub your mouse forward, the red ball pulls out to the left, the stripes go out to the left, and the white bar goes out to the right. Okay, so this is one of my favorite things to animate. It's so silly and simple, but you don't have to use a wipe when things are animating on horizontally that don't involve any kind of like texture or photo element. It's like magic. I'll show you. So this layout, I've actually got all of the little panels saved into this folder called panels.png. And so if you just step through them, and you can do that with your arrow keys in the project window, you can encounter that, and then that, and then that. Okay, so we're on panel number 13. This is important because when we go into this layout, which we're going to do just by double clicking, and then we rewind all the way back to the beginning, I can take layout 13 and I can just drag it on top. Okay, now I believe I also had this reference, which is the same thing. Okay, so yeah, the reference is essentially the same, but let me just take 13 and drag it right on top. And whenever I'm using an image as a reference, I always like to do what I call the cheap lightbox effect. Now, if you've ever taken one of my classes, I do this all the time. It's like my way of tracing things in Adobe. So I select my layer. I'm going to change my opacity to like 50. Okay, and that's going to be my guide for where everything begins. All right, now I don't want anybody to see this, so I got to change this particular layer to what's called a guide layer. Now a guide layer, if you've never used these before, it's really quite awesome. And of course, if anybody has questions about continuously rasterize, if you have questions about cheap lightbox technique, or how I created any of the stuff that you see in the folder here, please just drop it into the chat. If you're watching the replay, drop it into the comments and I will do my best to answer. Okay, so I don't want anybody to see that I'm using the cheap lightbox technique because, you know, it's like a magician showing their hand. You don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click that layer and we're going to go to guide layer. I love the guide layer because check this out. Like, see how this looks kind of like weird and it's got different opacities of things going on? If I go back to my main composition, which I'm going to do just by going right here to this little composition mini flowchart tab. It's one of my, like, it's another one of my favorite little things in After Effects, and it's just before the little shy dude. And if you click on that, it gives you like a little map of your compositional hierarchy. So it's like, oh, this is how the things are related to each other. So it says this composition is inside of that composition. And I say, thanks, After Effects. I think I will. And it just kind of takes you back to the previous level. If you've ever played video games where like you're inside a room, but you want to go back to like the main room or the main hallway, it's kind of like that. All right, so here I go back, but oh my gosh, where's my guide layer? That's the thing with a guide layer. You only see it inside the comp where you're working. So if you have nested this composition inside another one or like precomposed it, nobody's gonna see that in the main composition. It's like your own little secret, which is pretty great. So we're gonna start all of our layers in this position, and then we're gonna end up in the position that we're at. So that's gonna take a little bit of setup, okay? So these are my stripes, and I want the anchor point for the stripes to be all the way on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, and I can see that from my reference panel that I'm a little bit off. So we're gonna fix that. Now I use a little script called Reposition Anchor Point. I'm a big fan of it. You can get it at aescripts.com for free. Alternatively, you can just use the snapping. So if you go up here to the pan behind anchor point tool, right, which is letter Y is the hotkey, and then you go over to snapping and you turn on snap. No, we don't want to do any of that. So I just take this guy and I grab and drag. See how it's like snapping to stuff? Like, that's amazing. Let me change my label color so you guys can see it better. So I changed my label color to red, and I'm just gonna really quickly reposition my anchor point to the center, and I'm gonna show you how that worked. I just dragged it to the right, and it just snapped to land at the far right center of my layer. I love this, it makes me so happy. So I'm gonna move that over, and I don't trust my mouse. I'm like a monkey when it comes to working with a mouse in my hand, forget it. So I do shift arrow right, and it's just gonna pop that over a few pixels horizontally, okay? And I can zoom in, and something kind of cool about After Effects is that if you are at a higher zoom, you actually get more precision. So yeah, those of you who are like, Illustrator has precision, yeah, but when you zoom in, you don't get more precision. After Effects gives you more precision when you zoom in, which I think is really nice. So like, for example, if you're at 50% zoom, each click of the arrow key is going to take you like maybe 2 pixels, but if you're at 100% zoom, it's going to take you 1 pixel. If you're at 200% zoom, it takes you half a pixel. It's amazing. So like, yeah, if I hit letter P and I just do my arrows, like this is moving half a pixel at a time because I'm at 200% zoom down here. Okay. All right. So I've repositioned that nicely. I'm going to change my zoom back to fit, which is my favorite zoom position. And for this particular layer, we're done setting the anchor point. So I'm going to move on to the long box. The long box is going to be the same situation. I'm going to take my pan behind our anchor point tool. I'm going to drag that over far right and then release my mouse. Don't touch the mouse after you've set it. Like just, you know, don't click your little clicker, just move it all the way over. Okay, so now oops, that's in the wrong spot. That actually needs to be on the other side. I lied. So it's going to be all the way other side. So the stripes have their anchor point on the, see? My anchor point moved with my mouse because it wasn't done. So I take this, I move it over here, and then I release my mouse, and then I can move, okay? So at any rate, where is I going with this? Oh, so the anchor point for the stripes is on the far right. The anchor point for the bar at the bottom is on the far left. Okay, got that? All right, so again, if you have any questions, just type those into the chat. I'm going to move forward and figure out where this layout in particular ends. So I timed out all of these little compositions to the layouts as they were in the final animation, and I can see that my very last keyframe, if I just go back 1 frame, and I'm going forward and back frames, of course, with page up, page down, or on a Mac, it would be, you can use page up, page down, of course, but you can also use command left and right arrow, or on a PC, control left and right arrow. Okay, that out of the way, your last alternative is to use the preview window, which is nice because then it's like using a VCR. So Remember VCRs? Anyways, so right here, I just went back to the previous frame and I'm at 323. So that's where the move actually finishes. Like that's where we are completely at this final location for the whole thing. So I'm going to double click that and I'm going to keyframe both my stripes and my long box and my balls. This is my little ball. This is my big ball. I'm going to keyframe all of them based on how I plan to make them move. So my stripes and my long box are scale. So I hit S for scale. I'm going to turn on the scale stopwatch for both. My ball, and I'm going to rename this guy my white ball. I'm going to hit return and type white ball. Those guys, I'm going to keyframe both scale and position. So I do S and then hold shift and type P. So now I have scale and position both up. Turn on the stopwatch next to both. And now I have my final position for both, okay? Then I'm gonna rewind to the beginning and I'm gonna zoom in on my timeline here, okay? There we are, zooming in. And in here, I'm going to take my stripes, I'm gonna uncheck this little insignificant seeming chain link right here. See this little guy? It is insignificant seeming, but it's more than meets the eye. If you turn it off, just like in Photoshop, you can then distort your layer. If you change this first value, which is your horizontal, right? So this is the scale of a layer is expressed in terms of percentage of original in horizontal, that's your first number, and vertical, that's your second number. So X and then Y if you're a math geek like me. So this first number, I'm going to reduce it, but the way I'm going to reduce it is just by dragging this scale value down. My kid came in with my phone. It's like children think that we can't function without our phones by us. Wonder how they got that idea. Anyways, so I'm just going in here and I'm zooming in like this by changing that scale, that first scale value smaller. Okay, so right now it's at 63. Another way you can make this smaller is just by clicking into that value and using your arrow keys. Okay, so if I just use my arrow key down a couple clicks, there we go, it's down. Fabulous. Hit return to lock it in. And I'm going to zoom out. And now I have my long box and I'm going to reduce its scale as well. So I'm going to drag that first value, making sure that I uncheck that little chain link first. And now that's going to go down a couple clicks. So I'm going to click in there and I'm going to do the down arrow as well. And it looks like we're at 61% and 61%. You might have slightly different numbers depending on how you aligned your layers. I'm going to take my red ball and I'm just going to move it over using my shift and my arrow keys until that's lined up properly. Nice. Then I'm going to take my white ball and I'm going to increase its scale. Now, if I have all of my continuously rasterize on, then it doesn't matter. This is why we designed this in Illustrator, friends, was so that we could scale layers as big as we wanted to. So if I do Command or Control A to select all my layers, and I turn on that continuously rasterize, it's going to keep that edge sharp. Okay? So if we go back to our original JJ test comp, and I just double click on Jack and Jones, and I just play back that little section, let's see how the dynamics of movement are going. Oh, that's not playing back smooth at all. So I can just step through it and see. So I'm just using page down. And this is at 25 frames per second, so it might be, so it started a little fast. And then it seems like to slow down. Like the distance between frames is like getting smaller, 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 smaller. Okay, so we could do all of that with just a simple ease. So I'm going to double click on layouts 4 once more, and I'm going to set an ease for all these last keyframes. So very frequently, if like all I animated was 2 keyframes, my first step is to just set an ordinary ease, and then I'll go back into it and I'll like fuss with it. And by fussing with it, I don't mean I add more keyframes. I used to do that until I discovered the graph editor. In the graph editor, we're gonna, finesse our easing so that we have like so it's slow enough or fast enough. Like we're really going to get in there. But for now, I'm just going to select all those guys and set them to an easy ease. Okay. So how are we doing so far? Are we, like, is everything making sense? Is there any new material where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know about that thing? If so, type it right into the chat and let me know. And of course, if you're watching the replay, type it into the comments. Okay? And if anyone's stuck, you should also type that into the chat and I will help you. Remember, there's like a 10 to 15 second delay. So don't delay in telling me that you're having a problem. Okay. All right, so that part is now done. And whenever I finish a layout, it's very satisfying. It's like checking off things on your to-do list. I'm gonna change my label color to green just by clicking that little color chip there. And I know they should have little colors, but instead they have words that represent colors, so click green. Then we're gonna move on to layout number 5. And layout number 5, it starts off looking like jail. And there's a reason for that. We need to make it look like the little image in the corner, which is to say we want it to have like a bit of a bend to each of the lines that are making up our jail cell. And this little stick, we're gonna tilt it. It's gonna be nice. And then by the end of the shot, it's gonna be very bent and the little stick is gonna be way over here and the circle is going to have gotten kind of mushed with all of those lines that collapsed into it, okay? So, Carol's like, I did not know about page up, page down. Yes, I love page up, page down. It's like the classic After Effects how to get from frame to frame. Back in the days, of when we could only put one mask per layer, that was the only way you could navigate between frames, was between page up, page down. Okay, so I'm going to go into layout number 5 now. And I'm going to show you these sticks. I'm going to hit Command E on a Mac, Control E on a PC, and it's going to open this file in Illustrator. When I go to Illustrator, you're going to see how I've set this up so that I can animate it. And then you're going to be like, wait, but how does that translate? I'm going to show you. So here in Illustrator, it was supposed to open. Let's try that again. Control E. Alternatively, you can do right click, open, layer source, or I do edit original. Edit original is nice because that's the same thing. Command E. Okay, so now I have all of these guys, and if you click on one of these paths and you hit letter A, you'll see that all of them have an anchor or a path point like in the middle. I know, like, why did I do that? Also, why is this layer handles black? That's terrible. Let's move on to the next one. So like if you want to check it, layer 9 actually has black layer handles, so I'm just gonna double click that layer and change the path color to like orange, so it's really obvious. Yeah, see that? So I'm just clicking through and you can see every single one of these guys has like a little point in the middle of it. So that's going to make it super easy to bend. Let's go back to After Effects. And in After Effects, in order to see those points, we have to convert all of these layers into shape layers. In order to convert your layers into shape layers, you got to right click and then you have to go to Mask and Shape Path. No, I lied. You have to go to Create and then Create Shapes from Vector Layer, okay? And that is going to change all of these Illustrator layers to After Effects shape layers. And when you're working with After Effects shape layers, then you have access to those path points. However, if you're working on a project that relies on version control, for example, you have a designer who's created these frames for you and they might need to go back into them based on client request, it breaks the link between After Effects and Illustrator. So these are now like independently functioning After Effects layers, okay? Yes, I added a point to the center of lines, exactly. So I basically made really simple lines just using, I don't think I used the line tool. I either used the line tool or I used the pen tool, and then I hit escape once I had just the 2 points, and then I used the pen tool right in the middle to create that new point. So you can refer back to the design tutorial where I did that, but I'm pretty sure that that's how I did it. Okay, so I have my small stick and then I have each of these guys. And if you're not seeing your path points in the middle there, yeah, I did it in Illustrator. Alternatively, you could do it in After Effects, but it's just like so much less precise. So like right here, if you're not seeing your like path point, your path lines, you got to make sure that you turn on this guy right here, which is your toggle mask and shape path visibility button. Okay. Great, Carol. Thank you for asking those questions. That's great. So this is the button you have to press in order to see those path lines and points. Okay. And all right, so we're going to bring in our layout once again. And our layout this time is this guy. That's the starting line. So I'm going to go and drop that right in here. Make sure that starts at the beginning. And T for opacity, drop its opacity to 50. Right click, guide layer, and lock it, because I don't want to accidentally move it in the process of moving everything else. And as you can see from this like lineup, actually it's sort of like you know, some of the lines are bent more than others. So if this is confusing to you, what you can do is reduce this opacity further, so it's really obvious that like, okay, the lighter lines are the guides and the darker lines are the actual artwork. So then I'm going to go through and I'm going to hit letter G on my keyboard to get the pen. And with the pen tool, you can actually select points. I know, that's super weird. In Illustrator, you can't actually select points with the pen tool because that would delete them. But here in After Effects, it's like when it's like being in the Upside Down in that show. Remember the show on Netflix where like there were those children and it was like an episode of the X-Files, except it took an entire season, that one. So yeah, it's like being in the Upside Down. I'm going to make a guide layer so that I'm sure to keep everything aligned. And just like the other Adobe programs, Control R on a PC or Command R on a Mac to get your rulers. And then you can just drag down like this. And I'm going to drag down so that this is like right at the vertex or the bent point of all of those lines, right? And then I'm going to lock it because I don't want to move my guide. My guide's like my buddy. So I'm going to lock guides by going to the View menu. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to bend these guys, okay? So I'm going to bend, and if you want it to lock to the guides, you're going to actually have to change something in your settings. Okay, so there's that guy. And it looks like all of my my lines are just a little bit off, so I'm going to just select them. I'm going to nudge them over with my arrow keys until they get to like a friendlier spot. Okay, and another thing that you can do here that you may not have known is that you can also like change the thickness of your lines if you need to. So right up here it says that the stroke is 61 pixels. If I just click into the stroke amount up at the top, I can just increase that stroke like one pixel at a time until it gets to be the right size. My zoom's not working right now, so bye-bye zoom. Okay, so I'm just going to increase that just by clicking into this area right here until I get to the right stroke size. And maybe a little more. Yep, right about like 70, 71 pixels should do the trick. Okay, so that aligned really nicely. And in case if you're doing this by the numbers, if I hit P for position, my very first layer here of lines is at 1856 pixels horizontally. Okay, so let's go through and I'm going to hit V for my selection tool, and I'm going to keep going back and forth between V for the selection tool and G for pen. So I'm going to lock my background so that I don't keep selecting it, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to G for pen and just hover on that point. And I can see that I wasn't very precise with it, but thanks to the guide I can be. Okay, so I can just move that guy. and then V, and I'm just going to switch back and forth between the selection tool and the pen tool. V for the selection tool, G for the pen. And just be careful not to add more points, because that's just going to make everything crooked. And crooked is not good. Not in this case. Okay, so I've navigated here to layer 6 and then layer 7 and so on. So any questions about this process that I'm going through? Did it make sense how I like pulled up the rulers, how I'm arranging the these little lines so that they're bent properly? And this screen grab that I pulled, it's really kind of cool how you can do that in on a Mac, especially with QuickTime. You can just copy an image from a QuickTime and then paste it into preview, like kind of like magic, and it automatically just, it makes a new file based on whatever you copied in QuickTime. So yeah, I'm realizing that sometimes it's just useful to have both my Mac and my PC. Like my PC is a beast. It's super fast. It renders super fast. My Mac has like lots of just like really time-saving widgets and things that I'm realizing that I kind of like using sometimes. So I do a decent amount of work going back and forth. Plus I have like 20 years worth of fonts on my Mac. So I'm not going to give those up so easy. But like I was trying to export a video the other day on my MacBook, and my MacBook's old, you know, this isn't a diss on Mac, like it's an old MacBook, it's from like 2014, and that video took 8 hours to export, and then I tried to export it on my PC and it took 13 minutes. So, and oh, and by the way, after the 8 hours, I was like, oh look, it failed because there was some error. And I was just like, all right, this isn't working. Okay, so that's all like bent the way that I want it. I'm gonna grab my small stick, and my small stick is fine in terms of the location of its anchor point. I'm just gonna rotate it a little. And I'm using the rotation tool. Hotkey is W for rotation. And I'm just gonna move that into place. Okay, and I'm going to take my ball, which is down at the bottom, and I'm going to move that over here. Okay. All right. And it's kind of good that I have that guide, because the ball is also like supposed to be the catalyst. It's the thing that kind of kicks off the whole movement. And yeah, that's pretty good. So now my ball is going to push everything over. Just get that. Yeah. My ball is going to push everything over. So the things I'm going to animate here, I'm going to animate, if I look back at my final video, in here, I'm going to hit J to go to the previous marker. And I'm just going to step through it with page down, okay? And see, the little stick is rotating clockwise and moving in position. The ball is just moving in position, and these other lines are just straight up bending. So I'm going to be animating on the stick first. The stick, I'm animating its rotation, so R, Shift, P. The ball, I'm going to animate just its position. And whenever I'm only animating horizontally or only animating vertically, here's what I do, friends. I hit P for position, and then I right-click position, and I choose separate dimensions. And this just makes it easier. I have like less data to deal with. So I'm just going to keyframe the X position, because when you first separate your position property, both of these guys are selected. So make sure you click off of everything first and then click back onto X position, okay? Then for my, I'm gonna call these my bendy lines. For my bendy lines, I'm actually gonna animate their path. That's the thing that has the points, right? So I gotta animate their path. So in order to bring up their path, I can just select them all and go to the search area and type in path. And look at that. It shows me the path property for all of those layers. Okay, and then I can just click. Really? maybe not. I can just click on the path stopwatch for each of these guys. So I can just like scroll all the way up on all the path stopwatches, and they'll all turn on. And this just creates that first keyframe at this current bendiness. Yeah, that's nice, right? The little search thing. I don't use that often enough, but it's very handy. Okay, so then we want to go to the last place of this. So I'm going to select on my next layout, hit letter I, and then page up to go back one frame. And that's my final position. So let's double click on layouts 5 again. Let's zoom in and let's bring in our reference image for this. Okay, so my reference image for this, I want it to happen like right here, and I want it to be at the same settings as my old reference image. So here's my little trick. You ready? I'm going to split this layer, edit, split, and that's going to create like it's like a razor blade tool. Like I just cut this into 2 chunks. So the later chunk, I'm going to replace it with my next layout, which is number 16. So to swap a layer in your timeline for something that you have in your project window, all you got to do is select the one in the project window, select the one in the timeline, and then Option or Alt drag, and it just swaps them out. Okay, so it swaps one for the other. That was so fun. I'm going to do it again. So first I did the edit split, and then on the top version, which is like the later version of it, I'm going to select that, select number 16 PNG, and Alt or Option drag to swap. Okay, cool. So now we get to align all those guys to it. So I'm going to take my little stick first. Well, actually, let's lock these. I don't want to screw them up. And I'm going to locate my little stick, which I could just click on. Let's just do that. I'm going to move the stick and see how it's giving me my like little motion lines. And if you're snapping to guides is bothering you, just go to the view menu and just uncheck the snap to guides option, and then you can like continue to animate kind of more freeform. Okay, so now I can move this guy like to here, but it's still snapping because up at the top I have snapping turned on, so you got to turn it off in both the places. If you're like selected on a layer and you're like, I can't see it, where is it? Just hit letter X and it'll scroll you to that layer in your timeline. There's my small stick, yay. And then I can just swivel that around until it lines up properly. There's like never airplanes outside my house, and today there's like airplanes. Okay, so now I'm just gonna move that into place. Okay, zooming in again to get that like roughly or precisely in the right spot. To rotate things like more precisely, you can just use on your, if you have a number pad, you can use your plus and minus keys, and that will let you rotate 1 degree at a time. Plus will go clockwise, minus will go counterclockwise. I don't know, unfortunately, what the equivalent is when you don't have a full-size keyboard or number pad, but if you do, feel free to type it into the chat or the comments. Okay, so that's zoomed in, or rather that's aligned. I'm going to take my ball, that's the next easiest thing, and I'm just going to move that over, and if I hold the shift key down, that's going to lock it to the horizontal. And you don't hold shift until after you start moving it, okay, friends? Because otherwise After Effects is like, oh, you want to deselect? And you're like, no, I don't want to deselect. Okay, so then I'm going to lock that. I'm going to lock my little stick because I don't want to move those by accident. Where are you, little stick? I can actually, if these layers are bothering me, I can delete them. Or if I'm one of those people, they call them collectors, not hoarders. You can actually just click this little shy guy right here, and it'll hide it from your timeline, and then you can click this shy guy here and it'll hide it from, like, it'll completely hide it. So this basically just informs you like which layers are bashful, and then you click this button up here and it's like, hey, we're gonna have a loud party, and then all the bashful layers are like, we're out of here, and they just leave. So the small stick, I'm gonna lock that as well. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to mess with everybody's paths, okay? So this layer's path is like way the crap over here. That's not going to help us. So we have to move the that little path point over. Okay, now if you want to keep that snapping at this point, just go to the view menu and make sure you have snap to guides turned on. Okay, so that guy snapped over there. Then I'm going to take my next layer up and I'm going to grab this point with my pen tool, G for pen. And if you're not sure which layers you have selected, you can always click off, click back on, click with pen, and then move. And what we're doing is we're kind of making like an array type of thing. So I'm just moving these guys and we'll see if it comes out okay. And what you can do is just solo. So I'm going to solo my background and I'm going to solo this topmost layer. And I'm doing that with this little button right here. And that can help you when you're trying to align stuff, frankly. So I'm just zooming in. I'm seeing how this is panning out. And it looks like, if I turn this off, it looks like this has gotten really thick. See how thick that is? It was not that thick before. When I go back to the beginning, was it that thick? I'm gonna hit J to go back to, ooh, it was not that thick. That is way too thick. So let's turn on this. Yeah, see, that's ridiculous. There's no reason for that. And also it like lost my positioning, right? Like I had this like beautiful bend here. And I'm just paying attention to the spine in the middle. I'm gonna drop this stroke width. Like this is outlandish. Why is it so big? So it looks like it actually needs to be like 21, 22. Okay, so I'm gonna do 22 for everybody. So if I select all these guys, whether they're visible or not, I'm just gonna set all of them to 20. Why was that one? Now that's weird. That's like some phantom stuff going on. Because all of these say that they're 71, right? Like if I click on this guy, it says that it's 71, but this one for some reason is 22. So I'm wondering if, I mean, it's possible that there's some kind of an issue here. Like if I swivel this closed and swivel this open again and I go to the stroke, yeah, it's still 71. If I change this to 22, yeah, it's like barely even visible. We'll see what happens. We're gonna just set that 1 to 22 because that seemed to work. Okay, so I'm gonna advance to the next keyframe. And I'm just gonna line these guys up. And it's easiest to do it like a little at a time. Okay, so I'm just shoving everything closed and then turning on the guide layers, the white at the bottom, and then here's the first one, here's the second one, and see how it's like kind of bent, like this little piece is coming up, and that's weird. So I'm gonna click on it and I'm gonna G for pen and just line that up. And it seems to have like kind of an issue with the bending, which is okay. We can always fix it later. Okay, I'm just like lining all these guys up. Now, if your autosave just like keeps interrupting you, you can always change that in your preferences. And I'm gonna drop this to 22. See, that's too small for that one. Huh, very weird. Okay, so we're gonna move on to this one. Let's just check scale, shall we? Ah, son of a gun. That's why it did it. The scale of this guy got screwed up. That was the reason why it required a higher path or a smaller path number. So if I change this back to 100% scale, I can go back to my like higher 71 path size. So now if I go up here and I go 71, hello, that's going to be better. Okay. All right. Fabulous. Hit letter U. And now I can fix that because it was wrong. So let's turn off that. I'm still focusing on just the first two. Okay, friends? And just, you have to be mindful. Like that was one of the gotchas, is that you have to be careful that you're only messing with your path points and not with your scale, and just moving the path points one at a time the way you want them. Okay, so moving that out like so, and then moving this guy. So V if you need to switch and select a different one. Okay, yeah, and then just kind of going through and lining them up. And here we go. Okay, and then I can move this one over. And it can be a little bit confusing. You want to keep track of everything, and that's why I like using the solo switch. So is everybody cool with using the solo switch? Any questions on why I'm doing this stuff? What happened with the stroke width? What had happened again was that my scale value had changed while I was moving my, what I thought were my path points on that first ray. What I actually did by accident was I like scaled the width of my layer, and that caused all kinds of problems because I didn't mean to. I didn't want to scale the layer at all. I just wanted to move those path points. If you'll recall, I only set keyframes on the path points. So here's this guy. Solo switch only shows your current layer and other layers that also have the solo switch turned on. So it's kind of like an invisibility cloak for your other layers, like the inverse of the eyeball. So G to bring up the pen. Does that make sense, Carol? I use the solo switch all the time, especially when there's like a lot of layers going on and I just want to focus on some of them. The shy guy is a little bit different because you can still see the layer if its visibility is turned on, but it's hidden in the timeline. So like, see how it jumps in the numbering from 13 to 24 down here? That's because of those shy layers. See, 13 to 24, and then there's like a thick line. And if I unshy, just by like clicking that big shy again, it's like, party's over, come on out, little guys, and then all the little guys come back. So I don't use the shy switch as much, but it does come in handy. Now here's one of the gotchas, friends. If you see that your pen has turned into a pen with a plus by it, that means that it's going to try to make a triangle out of your ray, in which case just hit letter V and that'll switch you back to your selection tool, and then you can get in there and mess with it properly. Okay, so then I'm going to come back over here to this guy and G for the pen. Carol always asks such good questions. If any of the rest of you have questions, please feel free. Okay. And if it's after the live stream, seriously, like if you are stumped, if you're stuck and you're like, I can't make heads or tails of it, you can always just drop me a note, leave me a comment. I can get in touch with you. I could do a Loom video to help you through that particular section, like a little screen recording type of thing. or we can meet one-on-one for a couple minutes to clarify it. Okay, I would be happy to do that for my YouTube friends, because this is tricky stuff, you know, and I don't want you to run into a situation where you're like, yeah, so that tutorial didn't work for me and I kind of needed it for this thing that I was doing. And whether that thing that you're doing is for like personal, hitting V now, V to get my selection tool, whether that thing you're doing is personal or for work, like you still deserve to know the answer, and you shouldn't feel like you're like left high and dry just because this is through YouTube. Okay, so here I'm in my pen tool and I'm just going to move this guy over. See how it's just like easier to keep track if you're using the solo switch and just turning on one solo at a time. And then I can really like just be very precise. As my buddy Austin Saylor from Full Harbor membership often says, own every pixel. So like, yeah, that's not perfectionistic, but no, it's seriously, if you're going to spend the time making something, and I would say especially if you're making something just for you or for your portfolio, like own every pixel, make it as nice as you can. If not for other people, for you. That's the most important audience member, is you. You want to make the work that you're going to be proud of, that future you is going to look back on and just be like, yeah, I made that. That kicked ass. I'm like totally into that. Okay? So again, if you need help after the stream or when you're watching the replay or what have you, just reach out to me and I can help you out, okay? Even if I don't know you yet. Okay. Beautiful. Nice. So that took a little while, but it's exactly the way I want it. So the solo switch, does it just, Carol's asking, does that just do an action on that layer versus locking others? No, it's like being able to see it in isolation, separate from others. It's not like true isolation mode, like when you're working in Illustrator. Like you could still accidentally move something in theory if you were doing things in the timeline. If a layer is not visible or if a layer is not soloed, you could still accidentally change its properties in the timeline. But it just makes it easier for you, or easier for the After Effects user to understand what's going on because they're just viewing a few of the layers at a time. And it also makes it easier on the computer, because sometimes our computers are just like, no matter how powerful they are, our project will just be a beast and our computer will be like, are you serious? I cannot handle this right now. You have 10 gigabytes of empty space on this machine and I am trying. You know, so if you are only viewing a few layers at a time, your computer's going to have an easier time because it's also only showing you those layers, right? Okay, so that is done. That took a while, I'm sorry. I'm going to go over and I'm going to pull up the ball and the small stick. Carol, I hope that makes sense. If not, like, feel free to follow up. Okay, so I'm going to select both those guys and hit letter U. And let's go into our final animation. Yeah, so you would have to lock the other layers to not mess with them. Okay, so back to my main comp. Let's just preview what that section looked like here. And I'm just going to advance frame by frame just by double clicking that video to open it in its own window and just paging down. And another thing that can help if your computer's chugging, drop your resolution. Like, why do you have to work at full resolution? You'll still export at full resolution, but while you're working, like, dumb it down, make it easier on your computer, and it'll just play everything back much faster. I mean, it looks crappy for a live stream, but at least it's real time. So that actually gets much slower as it gets to that point, which is really nice. I know we've gone a little over time, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna keep going. So yeah, it gets slower as it gets in there. So I'm just gonna go in, double click, and I'm gonna select all those keyframes. Okay, and now comes like the fussy part. I'm actually gonna show you how to make those keyframes like much, much slower and make the first ones maybe a little bit faster. So I'm going to select all these guys. And at this point, thanks to the magic of streaming and the fact that like this is a lot for a computer to handle, like doing After Effects and live streaming, we are not really able to see this in real time. Let's go back, actually, let's go back to the original video and watch it in, let's watch it here. So inside of my part 1 folder, we will see it in assets or in here, either or. And inside of assets, reference, Jack and Jones. So just watching for that part where like the lines all bend, okay? Give it a moment. Yeah, it gets way slower at the end. It just like feels really sticky, right? And it even goes with the music. Okay, so we're gonna do that. All right, sorry about that. So we're gonna do that. This is why I didn't want my phone in here. My kid came, brought my phone. Anyways, so here we go. I'm gonna make that end bit really slow, really, really slow. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mess with the keyframe velocity and maybe get into the graph editor just a touch. Okay, so I'm gonna take all these keyframes. I draw a big old box around every single one of them. Check, check, check. There we go. They're all selected. And then I'm going to click on this button right here for the graph editor. And I'm going to make sure I see these humps. The humps mean that I am looking at the speed graph. And you can get to the speed graph manually just by clicking down at the bottom on this like little notebook looking thing where it says choose graph type and options. And I click on that, I choose edit speed graph. And the speed graph is all about how fast the thing is going. So when it's at its peak, that's its fastest. And we can click this double noodle button and that's going to zoom in on just the part that we want. We're going to take our selection tool and making sure that this like transform box isn't turned on, I'm just going to draw a little box around this first knot of keyframes, because this actually represents all the keyframes when they started, which were at a velocity or speed of 0 pixels per second. We're going to speed that up. So we're going to take that handle and holding the shift key down, I'm going to pull that to the left. Okay, and that's going to make it start off faster. And if you look at the little dots up at the top here, you'll see that the dots are actually migrating away from our first keyframe. They're migrating away. But then what about this last bit? So I'm going to make a little box around the last bit, and I want that last bit to be really slow. So I'm going to pull that to the left, and as I pull to the left, I'm going to hold shift again. And you'll see that the dots are all just traveling hard over to the right. So that might be a little bit extreme. I'm going to rewind to the beginning of this little pre-comp, and I'm going to just play back for you frame by frame what this did. See, that's the first bend. It's like like that's a lot of movement already. And then it super slows down, but that could look really nice. Alternatively, if you want it to be just a little bit less harsh at the beginning, because like if it just starts like this, like it's like a jerk, like oh my gosh, you can draw your little box around that first knot of keyframes, and then you can pull that handle out to your right, and if you hold the shift key down, you can watch this influence number get bigger. Okay, and the influence number is really just gonna help you understand how much gravitational pull that keyframe has over your layer. So if it's got a small influence, that means it's almost like throwing the layer to the other keyframe. Okay, it's like I'm here, you're there, poof, you know. It's as if it's like a tiny magnet that doesn't have very much power. When it has a long handle like this, that is what's known as a lot of influence. And so if I hover over this keyframe, or if I draw a little box around that knot of keyframes, and I just hover over the handle, maybe I have to actually pull the handle. Come on, tell me your influence. If it doesn't tell you the influence, you can also right click and you can go to keyframe velocity. And the velocity coming into it is known as your incoming velocity. This is set to 96, which is really, really harsh. So maybe what we want to do is just back off a touch. So instead of 96, see, there's my influence. So now it's saying like 88. You know, I usually like it to kind of be like 10 and 90 or like 15 and 85. I try not to have the numbers like both be too high. But yeah, so this kind of a graph might look pretty good. Let's see how that plays back, if it plays back. And see, it's telling me that it's not playing at real time. And that's because it's caching or loading my frames into the memory. Okay, I'm gonna hit letter N. Let's turn off the visibility of these top two guys. And actually, let's turn off our solo switches. So if I go to switches and I just turn off solo, it turns off all the solos except this guy, which was locked. Okay, and so let's just hit space bar and play that back again. All right, that's loading up. And it's really not happy about playing that in real time, even though it's only 36 frames. Come on, what's going on here? But you get the sense that it's like going to get much, much slower going in there. Okay. So that's all good. I'm going to go back to my JJ test and I'm going to change that label color to green. And of course, when I QC this whole project, I'm going to make sure that I have everything set up with my continuous rasterized switches. So then here comes the fun part. Fun part, crazy part, I don't know. And this is the distortion. Okay, but do you have any questions on what I just covered? If so, type it into the chat, type it into the comments, and I will help you. Okay, so here we have layout number 6, and you can see that these stripes are actually like a big banner. And if I just advance frame by frame through this, they kind of get small and then big. Really big, fills up the frame, and then small. And it's kind of a loop, right? Like it just keeps getting smaller and bigger and smaller and bigger. Now you could design all of that in Illustrator and just make like a whole like a really long strip where it goes big, small, big, small. But I'm going to show you how to do it in After Effects. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have to import a long layer, because if I go into this layout, what you'll find is that my trusty stripes are, oh, they're actually really long. Oh, that's good. So that was a surprise. Let's just move these over. No, they're not really long. It was a lie. Oh my gosh, I'm so upset. So these stripes didn't come in the right way. So I'm just going to undo a few times. That means I need to bring them in another way. So what I did in Illustrator, I actually created a separate document that has the stripes like really, really long. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if I just go to my desktop, and I go to this. No, not dry brush. I'm not learning dry brush, sorry. AEGOJJ animation. Jack and Jones. So see, I have this Jack and Jones layouts 6 long. If you didn't download that, it is in our Google Drive. So if you go to Google Drive, yes. if you go to Google Drive, in that link that I shared with you guys, there is something called Jack and Jones Layout 6 Long. So you're going to need to download that in order to actually make this whole thing. I know I don't have Helvetica Bold on here. We'll deal. So it has this like long stripes thing in this Jack and Jones Layouts 6 Long. And that's what we're going to import, and that's what we're going to mess with in After Effects, okay? So I'm going to go back to After Effects, and I'm going to import Layout 6 Long. Let me show you how. So let's save this. I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as Part 2. Now, if you have a file name like this, where it like ends in a 1 or ends in a 2, what you can do quite easily is just do File, Increment, and Save. I love this, because then I just keep incrementing and saving, and it just keeps adding the numbers bigger and bigger. Okay, so I'm going to import that layout, the long layout. And if you haven't saved yet, what are you waiting for? So I did Command I on a Mac or Control I on a PC, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to go and find that trusty file right here. Okay, Jack and Jones Layout 6 Long. Let me show you how we're going to import it though. Import it as composition retain layer sizes. Okay, this is the easiest to animate, and it assumes that you're not going to go back in and mess with the dimensions of your layer. I'm going to hit import, and there it is, Layout 6 Long. Oh, come on. Okay, so there's my stripes. Thanks, stripes. And I can simply copy them and paste them into the other comp, or better yet, let's just like set them up right here, shall we? Like, why not? So what they had in that is they had like this kind of undulation, and the undulation, there's a few different ways that you can make it, not least of which is to really just like create like a really long composition that has all of the undulations built in. So I'm going to walk you guys through a few different distortion effects so that we can pick the right one for this. And I haven't tried this out yet, so let's see what works. So if I go to the Effect menu, which is probably a better place to go, or you can go to Distort, it doesn't matter. There's a few different distortion effects. Now, if you chose something like Bulge, if I just change the layer handles here to like red and click on Bulge, Bulge gives you like a little, let's zoom in, gives you this little control-y thing, and you can make a bulge, okay? But that's only one bulge, right? And you're like, yeah, but there were like a lot of bulges in there. So here we have one bulge, and you can change the taper radius so it's not like a harsh line between what is and isn't bulged. And you can increase the bulge height or decrease it. Now the problem with this is even if I'm working at full resolution, it's not as sharp. Okay, you're going to notice that your pixels start to break down, which is why they have this anti-aliasing choice. You can change that to high anti-aliasing, and in theory that's going to be cleaner. It may be cleaner, it may not be cleaner, but it's there. Okay, so with this, what you can do is you could create like multiple bulges. So you could duplicate your bulge, you could move the bulge over, and now you have like another bulge here, and then you can mess with its settings. And if you look, like, let me just turn on the background layer here. See these like little squares in the corners? You can change the bulge height, or rather the bulge size, by pulling the squares, and it's going to make that magnifying glass type of thing bigger. And then you can make it a more bulgy bulge by clicking this bigger, the bulge height property. Okay, so that's one way that you could do it, but it's, you know, not perfect. Another way that you could do it is using a different effect. So let's turn off bulge and bulge. Another way you could do it is by doing a different kind of an effect, and that would be where is it? Mesh warp. So mesh warp, some folks love mesh warp because you can get a lot of control over it. But prior to mesh warp, let me just show you guys Bezier warp. So if you take Bezier warp and you drag that at the bottom here, and notice I turned off the other effects. I can always go back to them if I want to. What Bezier warp does is it creates these handles that allow you to push and pull different areas wider or narrower. Okay, so you have corners, sure, but you also have these handles off of the corners so that you can create like different distortions within your, let's say, box. See how that, like, just moving that around changed it. Okay, so this is giving me some variation, maybe not as much variation as I want, but I'm able to get like some of that thick to thin happening. Okay, now you can totally like combine this stuff. You can animate this stuff. You can, you know, do any number of things with this stuff, which is really kind of cool. So you could, in theory, take this Bezier warp, for example, and you could animate into it. So maybe we want to go like 10 frames forward, and we want this Bezier warp to be at all of these goofy positions at that point in time, and then we can go backwards and we can just reset the Bezier warp and it'll go back to the original. And then if I hit spacebar, you'll see it like bulge out over time. Okay, why won't you play? It's refusing to play. So let's just do page down a couple of times. So that might be a good solution in terms of getting this to like kind of bulge out and in the way we want it to, right? But you see how it's like starting to pucker the stripes that are at the bottom, and that kind of can't really be helped because it's getting clipped. Let me turn on continuous rasterize. Oh, all right, continuous rasterize fixed it. That's so beautiful. I'm gonna hit letter U to see my keyframes and just zoom in with my mountain slider. Okay, so here we go. So zooming in. All right, that actually looks pretty good. So we could have this like start normal, then get wide on one side, narrow on the other, and then switch it, right? Like, why not? So if I just advance another 10 frames, which I can do just by clicking into the time and doing +10, it doesn't work with minus, but it works with plus for some reason, and then hit reset again, and that takes it back to neutral. And the reason why I want to go back to neutral is because I want these guys to pinch in, and I can pull these corners in as well. And if you pull the corners in, it actually pulls everything in. Which reminds me, I'm gonna do a tutorial on like my favorite distortion effects so that you guys can see all of them. But this is, I think this one's gonna work really well for this. Ah, see, you have to be careful. Like once you set it, you have to like make sure you release your mouse. And then I'm pulling this up like that. You can even pull it like off screen if you need to. There we go. That's looking pretty good. So if I go through this, it started normal. Then it bulged that way, then it bulged that way, and then I could have it go normal again. Really, like why not? +10, and I could just like repeat the whole process, right? So select all those keyframes and just copy paste them later. I think that would be fine. Okay, and whoops, wrong key. Okay, Control C, Control V, right? And then if I play that back, now the reason that looks, thanks Carol, yeah, I'll do a distortion effects tutorial for you guys. So quality, if I crank that quality to 10, it's going to take forever to export, but at least it's going to be like sharp, right? My playback is currently set to quarter resolution. That's why it went like really gnarly. But if I have this set to full resolution, there's a good chance it's not going to play back normally. So now this is playing back, but it's not playing back normally, and I can see that it's actually like not terrible. Like it's pretty sharp and pretty nice looking. So this is something I could totally use for this section, and I think it'll look really great. And it's fairly smooth too. So if you have something like a situation like this, and you're like, oh, I just really want this kind of undulation to happen, you could combine the undulation with horizontal movement quite easily just by turning off your background layer. Taking this entire thing, like I wouldn't put the layer into the other composition, but I would put that whole composition into the other composition. And let me show you what happens then. So here's layout 6, right? And I'm going to take that layout 6 long and just drop it right where those stripes were, and making sure that that starts at the beginning. I'm going to rewind. And I'm going to do cheap light box, T for opacity, on both that and my original stripes. I'm going to set them, this one I'm going to set to 50, and this one I'm going to set to like 20. And then I can just like compare, like, okay, are these in the same spot? Are they not? I don't know. And if you're going to do a panning type of thing, why not have it actually start on the left? So I'm going to do align to composition left. Okay, and I can see that it's a little cut off, so I'm just going to do shift arrow until it's completely on screen. Okay, and then check this out. I'm just going to do P for position, and I could even do some S for scale if I want to. I'm not going to do any other property, and I'm going to advance to wherever that ending is. And like to finesse this, I'm going to be honest, it's going to take a minute, but I think it's going to look really nice. So right here is the end of that whole segment. If I just, yeah, see how it's like resolved into like full black. And the way it resolved to full black, if I just go back a little bit, it like zoomed in on one of the stripes. Okay. So okay, so right there is where it zoomed into all the stripes. And if I zoom in, I can see that that guy is actually like, it's a 2-second long move, which is pretty long in animation terms. If you figure the whole spot was only like 7 seconds, the whole last part was 2 seconds, okay? And I'm realizing that I don't have enough animation for 2 seconds here. So let's go in here, double click, and instead of having it repeat like a bunch of times, I'm just gonna extend the animation. Oh, wow, I actually did have it go to 202. That's fine. That was lucky. Whoa, hold on. Cancel. I don't want to, I keep like accidentally closing projects. It's such a problem. All right, let me go back to my comp 6, okay? And at this point in time, we actually want to zoom into this location, okay? So this gets a little fussy, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a null object. And those of you who've taken my classes, you're like, Kalika, again with the null objects, why? But I love the null objects. They are like invisible helper friend layers that can allow you to do really amazing things in terms of animation. So P-Shift-S, so now I've got my position and my scale, and I'm going to just take this layout 6 long, and I'm going to connect it to the null object. I'm going to call this end zoom null. I'm going to connect it using the parenting column, right? Parent and link. Close everything up first, like collapse all those layers, and then connect the layout 6 long to your end zoom null, okay? And then I'm keyframing position and scale on the end zoom null. And then I'm going to advance to like 202 on that. And I'm going to zoom way the crap in. And I'm going to move down. And I'm going to continuously rasterize. Aw, come on, really? Are you not going to be sharp for me? Oh, that had to be rasterized too. Okay. Let's see here. Are you not moved over enough? You're not moved over enough. So P for position. Let's move that over some more. Let's see if that actually worked. So I'm going to leave this at quarter for the playback, and let's see how that looks. So that's a little funky. I don't know if that's really working. Let's see. If I go into layout 6 long. Okay, so maybe what we need to do is have it so it goes to here, which is 116. I'm gonna have that be my final location. And maybe I don't actually need it to pan. I know, the panning was fun, but it doesn't seem to be doing the trick. So whenever I'm in a stitch like this, where I'm like, but I did all this work, I don't know if it's working. Here's what I do. Ready? I go in here into my project window, and I'm like, all right, this is the same comp. If I'm not sure, I can always right click, do reveal composition in project. There it is. And I can rename this guy. I can be like, this is my original. Okay. And then I can duplicate it. And then this is not my original anymore. This is my version 2. All right. And then in the version 2, we're going to select all these last keyframes. We're going to delete them. And then I'm going to extend the animation of the rest of them to fill in the blank. So then I take all these keyframes, right? Big old box, hold the Alt or Option key and drag. And as you drag, if you hold Shift, it'll snap to your playhead. Okay? And the other thing I'm going to do is that in my layout 6, I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, so now I'm going to have 2 copies of the layer as well as 2 copies of the comp. And I do my edit, duplicate. Okay, and then I'm going to Option drag to replace. And I'm going to turn off the second guy. And on this one, friends, I am not going to actually animate its position. So letter U, turn off position. I'm going to leave scale. Maybe I'll want scale. I don't know. And I'm just going to move forward. And you see how it's like doing the whole undulation thing unbeknownst to me, which is like kind of nice. So like right here, we are still parented to the null object, and then I can come to this point in time and I can just like mess with the null object, right friends? I can just be like, all right, here we go. We're going into this area. And then one thing that I do sometimes that just kind of makes things a little bit easier. Because I didn't turn up the opacity. Let's turn up the opacity. Okay, and I'm going to turn off the opacity here. Okay, and that is a little bit soft right now. But what we can do... Oh, it's because I'm at quarter res. I keep forgetting that. That's going to be much sharper now that I'm at full. Yeah, see, it's sharp, it's beautiful, it's nice. Okay, so going back, now I can just zoom way the crap into that area. And the scale is not really scaling fast enough. So once we get to this point, I'm going to have to scale really, really big. And if it's not scaling fast enough even still, you can always like hold the shift key while you scale. There. So that's going to like 4,000% or something. No, that's a bit extreme. And at that point, we can actually move it over a little bit. Just a little cheat, just to like get us in there, if it'll let us. That is doing nothing. All right. And that happens sometimes when you're dealing with continuously rasterized and you're dealing with parenting and you're dealing with effects. The scaling is working, but for some reason the positioning is having very little effect. So we can add position keyframing on this guy. Okay. So is it clear like why I did the duplicate? It's like my way of backing things up within the program itself. So like, yeah, you could increment and save, but why not just save a copy of your comp, of your layer in your After Effects? Like, what's the harm? So I'm moving this over a little bit and then zooming in. Really? Let's change this to quarter if it can't keep up. Wow, you are like breaking because I think your scale is too big. Sometimes when the scale gets past a certain size or the comp gets past a certain size, it like kind of freaks out. Okay, and another thing we can do to kind of let After Effects calm the crap down is to just mask this layer, because then it doesn't have to calculate all the stuff that's on the outside. Oh, that's interesting. It just like lost it. At the last minute it lost it. Let's see if I move it over. So weird. The moving isn't doing anything. At a certain point, you can just like cut to black, but it always looks better if there's some kind of a transition happening. Okay, maybe I don't need to move it as much. Maybe just a tiny. Weird. All right, I guess I'll just have to cut to black at that point then. So I'll just do layer, new, solid. Another thing that you'll notice when you're going like really big like that is that it like your scale math will be bad. Like you'll just play it back and you're like, wow, that scale math is just straight up bad. I don't understand why it got so big so fast. Like, look at this. We're at linear keyframes, which you would assume are going at a normal pace, but they're not. See, like it very, very, very suddenly got very too big. So the solution to that, unfortunately, my friends, is this really annoying thing called exponential scale. And what I do is I click the 2 keyframes for scale, I right click and I go to keyframe assistant exponential scale. And that creates a keyframe for every single frame of my animation, but it's perfect. Like, you're gonna find that it is absolutely like mathematically correct. And it's not just every single frame, it's like every other frame as well. So if you want this to be more gradual, you could totally like expand this to be longer, because right now this is what, like 201, 120, it's like 5 frames long, if even. So you could do, yeah, you could do like 10 frames. So shift page up will take me back 10 frames, or I can do my command shift left arrow or control shift left arrow. Here I'm just gonna do the accordion technique again. Alt drag to the left, hold shift, and it'll snap. Okay, so now I have this really, really smooth transition going on. And I know my text still has like that weird thing going around it. We'll fix that in a moment. Okay, yeah, that worked so much better. All right, so the last thing I'm gonna do, and I know this isn't exactly what was in the video. The video actually had like really thin lines inside of the text. We're not gonna do that today, but I'm gonna show you how to take the text and like have it show up regardless of what is and isn't there. So all we need to do is we need to have our black text under our stripes, and then we need to have a copy of our black stripes above our white text. So this layer that's called text bowl is actually my black text, and then I have a layer just called text, and that's my white text. So I'm going to duplicate this composition that had the undulating whatevers. I'm just going to do edit, duplicate. I'm going to drag that above my white text, and I'm going to tell my white text to use that as an alpha mat. I know, so cool, right? So now, as long as I don't change the animation on that above layer, you're always going to see your text, because it's going to be inverted where the text, where the stripes are not. Where the stripes are? Yeah, where the stripes are, where the stripes are not, you're going to see it inverted. Okay, so I'm just going to rewind real quick so that you guys can see this whole situation. Okay, and so now it's like getting wider and less wide, and you can kind of see it's not quite there, but it's getting closer. And I think what I need to do is just like really animate both ends of this, like the left end and the right end inside of my long comp. But we've run out of time because we've been here for like a really long time. And I hope that that kind of makes sense what I'm talking about, that I would flare out the left side here. Alternatively, I could take this whole composition, which currently just has a little bit of position animation on it, and I could just move that over a little bit, so to speak. Yeah, but I don't want to mess up what's there for now. Let's just save that. I know the alpha mat thing. I'm so glad you guys like that. It's like, it's one of my favorites. It's like a little, like, it's an ace in your back pocket. Okay, so here's my JJ test. Now all of my layouts are done. I can skip layout number 7 because layout 6 resolved into layout number 7, and my full animation is pretty much finished. Aside from the fact that I probably want to mess with that like inner like stripey comp to get it like really cool. Right now it's a little bit lame. It's not quite giving me the undulation that I like. A little bit more pixel pushing, and I think I'll get there, but you don't have to watch that. Anyways, I'm going to post my finished version of the project into that same folder. It's just going to say _finished. You can download that if you want to kind of dissect it and see what I did. I hope this was helpful. It was really fun teaching it to you. If you have not yet signed up for my newsletter, that's how you're going to find out about future live streams for the most part, unless you're just like constantly stalking YouTube, in which case, yeah, sure, like and subscribe, but definitely sign up for that newsletter, because whenever I do a live stream, I like post it. There's like a document that goes through what all the live streams are coming up. If you have a suggestion for a future live stream, please drop me a note or put it into the comments. I thank you so much for watching this. Spread the word about KalikaFX. There's great things coming up on the horizon, and I can't wait to see you again. Next live stream is going to be next week, Monday at 6 p.m. I hope I'll see you then, 6 p.m. Eastern time. All right, thanks so much, guys. Have a great night. Bye. Or a great day, depending on where you are. Bye, guys. Thank you.